Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Tonic Accord Political Podcast. My name is Drew, and I'm joined by my friend and co-host Alex here. We are both political science graduates and professionals, and we're here to just talk to you about what's going on in this election. As of right now, it is 5 p.m. on the Pacific time on the 4th of November. So currently, we're not done with this election yet. No candidate has secured the 270 votes needed to win the electoral college, but we wanted to try and give our initial reactions to what information we're seeing and where this election could go. So, Alex, it's been a crazy, 24 hours, if not more. What are you seeing, and what are you surprised by, and what are you not surprised by?
Well, good afternoon, Drew. First, I'm reading the tag on my Yogi tee, and it says, "Be kind to others, but always be compassionate to yourself." And I think that's a good message for today. But yeah, man, it's been an interesting last 24 hours. I think we both were talking, didn't get a lot of sleep last night. I'm not feeling amazing today for a multitude of reasons, but this election, I was wrong. I thought that Trump was kind of a fluke in 2016. People wanted change, I think, and they just he was people's Hail Mary. And it turns out, actually, I think he has quite a strong base, and it's actually grown. And it was somewhat surprising to me. I think Biden is going to end up winning, but how close it is fascinating to me. And I've received a lot of texts from friends in Spain and other parts of Europe, and it seems like people are concerned and scared. And this was kind of a test for us, and people are kind of surprised at how close it is. So that's my initial takeaways. I think it is good to see that Biden, is doing well in Michigan. Getting back into there is important after Trump won it in 2016. So that is good to see, but it's still too close for me.
Yeah, this is certainly, when we started to see, right, Florida and Texas. Texas was pretty much going to go for Trump anyway. It was crazy that it even was a toss-up, which is insane. But when we started to see that some of these reach states like Florida and Texas started to go, and early on, Georgia and North Carolina seemed very pro-Trump. So, like, it was very clear, and especially when Trump won Ohio, it became very clear that this was not the referendum against Trump that Democrats had hoped for, right? The idea they had this idea that, like you said, Trump was such a bad president that people are going to be out there voting in droves, and it'll be mostly for it's going to be this massive referendum. You'll see a blue wave. It's not exactly panned out like that. Now, we have seen record turnout. People are politically charged, but we've also seen record turnout for Donald Trump. Donald Trump has already surpassed the popular votes he got in 2016, and Joe Biden now has the record number of popular votes of any candidate. So we have record turnout for everybody, right? So it's not like it was just this massive blue wave and all these people. It's not. Or I also don't see a massive shift away from Trump among Republicans. Unless you're talking about Arizona, right? So before we get into the weeds, let's get some of these base things out of the way, which is I agree with you that this is not the referendum election that Democrats had hoped for. It's a lot tighter than some people expected. The main thing I've seen is that a pretty consistent 4 to 7 point shift from the polls to Republicans. Now, not enough to take the election back, but I remember seeing polls where Biden was up in Wisconsin and Michigan by 6-7 points, and now it's going to come down to a point or less. That's a pretty big error. That's similar to the error we had in 2016, and now that we've seen it twice, right? Now that we've seen that error twice, I think there's a major flaw in the way things are getting reported, and it's not just like this was a flaw in the polling from red-leaning polls to blue-leaning polls, right? So there's a polling error across the board from everybody, and it's missing 4 to 5 point Republican swing.
Yeah. I think that is an interesting take there, is because it kind of seemed to me like after 2016, the Democratic Party kind of did an autopsy of what they needed to do differently going into 2020. And I think it was a really bad autopsy. They kind of seem to almost have got everything wrong, and it kind of puts their entire kind of mission upside down, right? Because they've been really getting into what I would call identity politics. They've been really involved in like systematic racism, bigger social programs. And it seems like a lot of voters didn't care about that message. And it's really interesting to me because this is an estimate. I don't have the actual number in front of me, but it was like, I think Trump got about 20% of Latinos, and pretty similar with black voters. And that's something I don't think a lot of people are thinking. So in places like Florida and Texas, Arizona, that's a big turnout group, and there's reports in Florida that a lot of Latinos just felt like the Trump campaign was speaking to them more and was really trying to go out and get them. And it's kind of interesting to me. And I think it's shocking to me that so many minorities did vote for a president who doesn't really have their best interests at heart, I guess I could say. And I also think that in Florida specifically, the term and the misinformation involving socialism really impacted Latino voters, because you have a lot of Venezuelans, Cubans, who don't have a very rosy view of socialism. And the Republican Party was good at painting the left as socialists. And that did, I think, turn off a lot of voters, especially in Florida and Texas.
Yes. There's an interesting pattern I've seen, too, looking at exit polls. Like, again, what you said is Trump did better with minorities this time around than he did in 2016, right? He gained ground with black voters, and he gained ground with Latino voters. Now, in the same time, there's also increased participation in general. So even though he gained ground percentage-wise, but there might still be more black votes for Biden than there was in 2016. It's a different metric you have to look at, but absolutely, there's a real through line of that means like Trump gained ground with minorities that a lot of Democrats didn't expect to see. Especially, we did talk about Florida with Cubanos and stuff being very worried about socialism. I think that goes to show that the Democratic strategy to get Hispanic voters needs to be adjusted. Right? They cannot look at, like I just said, Hispanic voters. Perhaps you need to start breaking them up instead of just looking at them as one block. How do you appeal to Catholic Mexicans? How do you appeal to Cubans who are really afraid of socialism? How do you appeal to young Latinos that are more progressive, right? So, we're seeing these monolithic blocks of voting blocks break down more and more, right? It is. I mean, like black voters is still predominantly Democrat, but it's starting to seep away. And that's a problem for Democrats. I think that they really need to message things differently because, again, I do think Joe Biden will squeak this out, but it goes to show that an anti-Trump message was not really a good rallying call. And it needs to be some things. And a couple things I want to point out is exit polls in Florida showed that overwhelmingly people voted, they already passed, overwhelmingly people voted for the $15 minimum wage. 70% of people in the exit polls said that they wanted more government in their life. A majority of people said that they wanted more government involvement in healthcare. So these are things that you would look at. I look at as like for the Democratic Party is like, why are you not killing it? Why are you not killing it in this area where you have these party platform planks being so popular, but they don't like your candidate? And it's because Joe Biden didn't focus enough on things that matter to day-to-day voters. His soul of the country thing is, interesting, and I get what he's trying to get at, right? Because, there's a good argument that we are battling for the soul of the country. But for swing voters and swing Hispanic voters in Florida, what the hell does that even mean? The soul of the country? What is my day-to-day life? How is my day-to-day life going to change on this president? And Joe Biden didn't really do a good job explaining that.
Yeah, I definitely agree, and just to kind of back up what I said earlier, I have it in front of me now out of NBC, and they said, around 55% of Florida's Cuban American vote went to Trump, 30% of Puerto Ricans, and 48% of other Latinos, as the survey showed. So, I think you got it spot on there. And there was an interesting thing in The Economist last week where they said in Texas, younger male Mexican voters were going towards Trump. Like Trump has an appeal to kind of the Latino male culture. And so I think you're right. And I think Biden's going to squeak this out, but it's a serious problem going forward because in 2024, I think the Republicans will probably have a pretty strong case of victory there just because of where the party's going. And I think that's a problem, and I think the interesting one is Vegas. I'm really curious to see how Nevada goes, especially in Vegas, because CNN actually had a really good point. I was just watching them before we started recording, and they said that Vegas is almost like the laboratory for what's happening in the country, right? It was hit horribly by the pandemic. The economy is in the tanker, basically, and it has a lot of Latinos. Yeah. And so I'm really curious to see where Vegas ends up going. I mean, Nevada is probably the closest race right now in the country. I think it's about right. Exactly. And that's, and I see it actually. I mean, I drive a lot in Nevada, and you see a lot of Biden signs and a lot of Trump signs. And I think sometimes the media and the political science experts kind of seem to have a blind spot for what the actual like temperature of the country is. And sometimes you just need to listen to people. And I talked to a lot of people in the last week who thought Trump was going to win. And, I think there is just this, I don't really want to say silent majority or loud minority, but there are a lot of people that turned out for Trump.
Well,
and
yeah.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I was gonna say, I mean, like, you're right that there's obviously an unpolled or unaccounted for voter that votes Trump that's not showing up in these polls because, again, you're seeing, such a miss from what 538 had, from what even Fox News had as far as polling.
Yeah.
Everybody had some of these states like Wisconsin, Michigan, Biden +6, Biden +7, and that's not what we're seeing in the results. He's going to be up a bit. I mean, he won the states; they're called Michigan and Wisconsin, but it wasn't nearly as good. And so, yeah, there's definitely a silent voter, but it's not a majority, right? Let's look at the popular vote. I mean, Donald Trump has never had a majority, so I still don't believe in like the whole silent majority. But there's an unaccounted for polling error that needs to be addressed, or else they're going to have this happen again. Let's dive into where some of the predictions people got right, and one of the ones I wanted to say that they got right was this red Mirage, blue shift idea, which was Republican votes are gonna look way better in the Midwest on the first night because of that day of voting, and then that the Democratic votes will come in over time because of mail-in ballots, absentee ballots, and et cetera. And that is what we saw. I mean, when I went to bed last night, the Midwest was all red, and today, Wisconsin and Michigan got called for Biden, and now this race is actually closing up. I mean, if Biden takes Arizona and Nevada, he doesn't even need Pennsylvania. If Biden takes any one of those two southern states, North Carolina and Georgia, it gives him in a way better position. I mean, he wins it by default at that point. Like, we just need to count the votes. But it was interesting to see that shift happened. And it was also interesting to see the reverse happen in places like Florida and places like Ohio, where Biden had such a strong lead because the way that they counted their votes was different. And then it shifted back to red.
Yeah, I was totally wrong on Florida. I mean, even up to last night, I had some friends over for the election just to have some company, I guess. And yeah, I was telling them all right along that Florida was going to Biden. That was just how it was looking, especially with the demographics and especially like Miami, and these other like more progressive big cities. And I'm mind blown, but again, from what we've already been talking about, it doesn't really surprise me. And yeah, the red Mirage, I kind of saw that coming. A lot of the media wasn't talking about it, but a lot of like political scientists and podcast people were, and they were all just. Yeah, exactly. And they were all saying, expect this to happen. And it happened. And Trump did exactly what I expected him to do as well, which was kind of have a half-assed response on claiming victory. Even for him, he seemed a little low energy and kind of almost defeated in what I've seen. Like he said, well, I guess that means I won or whatever, or however he said it. It wasn't like I've won. And you can see, I think, even inside of Trump's orbit that he's nervous. I think that's part of his whole trying to sue Wisconsin now, Michigan as well. He wants.
Well, yeah, let's get into that. Wisconsin, they backed out. So they were going to call a recount in Wisconsin, and then the Trump campaign decided not to.
Gotcha. Okay, yeah, I did not see that, but that's interesting. I mean, it makes sense to me. And actually, just while we're on recount, I just want to clarify that. So every state has different recounting rules, basically. And so, but usually there's an automatic recount if it's less than 1%. Like I'm looking at Pennsylvania, where it's triggered if the margin is 0.5% or less. Wisconsin, it has to be within 1 percentage point. Nevada is also, I believe, the same. And so that's going to be interesting. I could see Nevada being kind of a fight.
Yeah.
And Arizona is similar. But so, and at least historically, recounts don't seem to actually help the person who's calling for them. Like back in 2000, it did not help Gore by any means.
Right.
And so Biden is in a good position because you don't really want to be the one who is calling for the recount. You want to be the one who is being challenged in that.
Yes.
And so I think it's much better for Biden. But I'm just worried that this is all going into Trump's narrative more than anything, and he's just trying to sow chaos in our faith in this process. And to me, the damage is already done because of how close this election is. Like, it doesn't really, like, I've been saying that as long as Biden, you know, like as long as it's close between Trump and Biden, there's going to be chaos. Like, Biden needed to win in a landslide, and he didn't. And I think we're just, over the next weeks, it's going to get interesting. I don't want to say ugly, but it's going to get interesting.
Well, it's certainly getting interesting. I mean, a lot of norms have been broken already, right? This whole notion that people asking to stop counts in certain counties of Pennsylvania, stop counts in certain parts of Wisconsin, but then keep counting in other counties. Like, I'm seeing an inconsistent message from the Trump team about to stop or continue counting. A lot of these claims of fraud are just not based in fact at this time. Okay, at this time, we're not seeing any facts to relate to this. I saw one video of a dude in a van, and like, it was on Steven Crowder's live stream, and everyone was saying, dude, this is proof. It was a video of a guy in a van with boxes. Look, no context, nothing. We have that's not proof, guys. Unfortunately, that's not proof of voter fraud. Sorry, a video of a dude in a van. So
no.
What the one that will be kind of interesting, right, is the one in Pennsylvania, where the governor of Pennsylvania changed it so that elections that are postmarked on election day can still be received 3 days after. And the reason that there might actually be a legitimate challenge to this is because the Trump campaign is going to argue that the Constitution gives the state legislature the ability to set the rules of voting. And they're gonna argue that the governor was out of her scope of power to do that on an election. So that's the one challenge. I think maybe they have a thing, but even then, I don't even think that'll be enough votes based on the information I'm getting from like Nate Cohn from the New York Times in Pennsylvania. The Philly votes that are still being counted are going to put Joe Biden above in PA. That's what I'm hearing at this time at 522. So it won't, like, the question is even a thing of like, will it even matter if they like do these little challenges and stuff? I mean, I saw a guy on Fox News talking about he's been in the trenches of these election litigations, right? And he said, you fight tooth and nail. You fight tooth and nail, and you throw the book, and you maybe pick up 1,000 votes.
Right.
Is that enough to even change some of these things? Like, is that it's not in Wisconsin. That's why they called off the recount, because a recount in Wisconsin for Trump in 2016 changed 100 votes. He's down by 30K. It's not going to matter. Michigan, the same thing. You know, he's down by over 100,000 votes. A recount or something there, or even a challenge. Even if they find a van full of ballots in Michigan and they change those votes back to what they were, I still don't think it would matter. So, you know, we have this weird scenario where Trump is, you know, stoking these fires of they're stealing this election and we're going to have all this litigation. And it's like, dude, one, I don't think your litigation is even going to go that far. And even if it does, even if you win some of these cases, it's not going to turn some of these states. So it's a really dangerous precedent to set for not much gain.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of Trump's MO is a dangerous precedent. So, I mean, yeah, I see him fighting. I mean, historically, he's a super litigious guy.
Yes.
Like, this is just what he does. And so I don't see him going down easily. Obviously, like, he's kind of an ass and has a super narcissistic personality. So I see him kind of trying to kind of tear down our whatever faith is left if he leaves office in January. I just kind of see this being an expensive, chaotic fight, and I think that's what he wants. His supporters are going to like it. I am seeing right now on ESPN CNN from 20 minutes ago. It says that Trump's lead in Georgia has shrunk to about 47,000 votes. So that's interesting.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
but
if dude, yeah, if he gets Georgia, if Biden gets Georgia, it's game over. There's nothing else. Nothing else matters.
Yeah, and okay, so I want to switch this now just a little bit, and because I have a theory now because the Senate has and the House have not gone well.
Right. For Democrats.
And my theory is for Democrats, of course. My theory is that because we're so polarized and people just vote down the ballot for the same party, that because more people voted for Trump than we thought, that means more Republicans got voted for than we thought. I mean, Susan Collins won quite well in Maine, which was surprising to me because I thought she was going to lose. But now my fear is that actually it's going to make the stimulus harder to do. And actually Republicans are probably going to be able to now pass a much simpler and much less lucrative stimulus plan, because the House has less. I think I don't actually know how many exactly, but the House lost a few Democrats, and so did the Senate, and so it's going to make Pelosi's job much more difficult.
Well, the Senate,
and I see now an even more difficult.
The Senate, the Democrats lost some seats, but they net gained. As of right now, the Democrats have net gained one. In the House, Republicans have net gained a few, but the Democrats will still hold the House. But yeah, the question is that Senate, and that is a really good question.
Yeah, and I'm also kind of just worried. Like, side note, what's her name? Marjorie Taylor Greene. She won. Our QAnon friend.
QAnon, right?
Yeah. So now QAnon officially has a voice inside of our Congress, and I think it's fitting in 2020 with just the just the conspiratorial energy in the world. It's not surprising to me, but that's also really worrying to me. And yeah, I don't really have much else to say about that, but it's just surprising. And I do think that even if Biden wins, the fact that, they did lose some seats in both the House and the Senate, I think that could be dangerous.
Yeah, again, that also plays into that whole thing. Like,
ahead,
right,
sorry.
It's not going to be this referendum thing, right? It's not going to be this cathartic Joe Biden comes in and just starts slamming out legislation and just, that's not going to happen, right? Mitch McConnell, there's a good chance Mitch McConnell remains a majority leader. And now, as far as stimulus, it's going to be good short term. It's good for the economy because, I think that stock markets are liking the idea of a Biden presidency with a Republican Senate. It means things will go slow and it'll be stable, incremental change, which is what markets like. And on top of that, McConnell has already signaled that they're gonna go through with some stimulus. He's willing to talk again, right? I mean, like tonight, he said, we need another stimulus. So, so I think that's going to go through. Right now, again, the Democrats are not going to get nearly as the kind of stimulus that they had hoped to get if they had everything, right? They're not going to be able to just write the book. But I think we'll get a stimulus passed really soon, and that'll be good for the economy and for just people. But so I don't know, man. It's definitely not good for Democrats, right? Obviously, they don't want they don't want like a split government. But I wonder if it is good for like just a cultural transition away from Trump. Like maybe the whiplash of going from Trump to an all Democratic government and having this conspiratorial contest thing, like, would it be too much for people and would they just rubber band all the way back red in 4 years? Or perhaps is having a stalled government with the Republicans, you could argue for like a second blue wave in 4 years. I don't know. I'm getting way down into the projection. There's a lot of hypotheticals, but it is now definitely this is definitely a warning call for Democrats, though, that they need to get their act together, because if you do go up against a candidate that is a lot more popular and likable than Trump, then they're going to lose. Then the Democrats are going to lose because they're going to lose these states back to the Republicans if they don't figure out how to actually communicate to people the things they need.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think you're right. And that's always, I've always been a fan of a divided government between the conservatives and Democrats. I've always liked that myself. We'll see. But I think you're right, is that a complete blue wave could be hyper partisan and divisive for a country that does not need more of that right now. I'm also curious, and I don't know what you think about this, but I'm curious how Republicans are going to react to this. Yeah. Because, last night, Trump obviously kind of like milquetoast declared victory. And actually, I was surprised to see that Fox News actually said, no, that's not true. I think I've seen, other conservatives like Rick Santorum say, no, he didn't actually win yet. Like, I think this is going to be the test, I think, right now. And my problem is that I do see Mitch McConnell calling out Trump if he kept declaring victory. But also most of Trump's base don't like Mitch McConnell.
Right.
They don't listen to him already. He's an establishment dude. So I'm just worried that things could get ugly. And I think I shared with you that PBS article about like what the world's saying about us right now. And everywhere around the world, like Germany's defense minister has called this a very explosive situation. Even the Chinese said that you shouldn't be declaring results. It's easy for them to say. But,
That's funny. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
But I do think that there's going to be chaos and uncertainty, and it's definitely a concern. And I think Republicans need to make sure and stand up against that if it gets that far.
I think it's good to remember, though, that like Trump can't just wave a magic wand, right? Like
Right.
he's been yelling, "Stop these vote counts," and Rudy Giuliani's been like, "I'm going to Philly and I'm gonna stop the vote," and like then nothing happened. Rudy Giuliani even said on live TV they went before a judge and the judge shot him down, and he said, "Oh, it's a Democrat judge." Well, like, yeah, man, sucks to suck. I don't know, like. I don't know what you want. Like, you went to a judge in Philly to try to do your thing and it didn't work. Like, it's not like the election's not getting stolen. You just don't have a good legal argument. We'll see how the rest of this plays out. But I actually, like, that's the thing is I don't see good legal arguments. I mean, Rudy Giuliani's talking about, like, Donald Trump tweeted about they're not letting in the observers. That's not true. The observer for the Trump campaign in Pennsylvania's were, like all the others, were ordered to be 20 to 30 feet away for social distancing. They didn't want them to be right above these people, you know, counting ballots. And so you're in the room, but they're saying, but then that's a legal challenge. And we weren't able to see every single ballot, you know, signed. So they should all be thrown out. It's like, I don't think these are good legal arguments at all. So I do have hope that a lot of these litigations will be turned down and that there's nothing Trump can do about it. And that you're right that like Mitch McConnell might be unpopular amongst Trump's base, but Donald Trump will be out of power and Mitch McConnell will still be in power. And if Mitch McConnell says, you know, Donald, you need to put this to rest for the better of the party, he'll do it. Like, I can see that happening. I can see how Republicans are going to be like, dude, we are not going to go down with this sinking ship if it's already halfway in the water, when we have to think about how we're going to take back the presidency in 4 years. So I actually don't see the Republicans backing Trump other than these crazy QAnon, like, you know, conspiracy influencers. But as far as the real GOP establishment, I don't know if they want to go that far. I don't know if they want to go that far to be like, you know, take like the Democrats stole an election. I don't think that's going to be the headline.
No, I definitely agree. I don't think so either. I mean, unfortunately, though, again, it's the people on the ground, you know, in Trump's messaging. So who knows? You're in LA. Has there been any rioting or protest, like any post-election chaos yet?
Not that I've seen. Not that I've seen personally. You know, I've seen some stuff online, but not in California. I mean, I've seen like, you know, there's Trump trains going around with trucks. Okay, cool. I heard that there's Trump trains in Maricopa County, which, you know, is turning AZ blue, and they're pretty pissed. But I haven't heard anything like crazy. I mean, there was one guy with a gun at a polling station that got arrested yesterday. I haven't seen anything like super crazy where it's like. But the rhetoric to get us there is now happening, right? Trump is saying things like fight back and they're stealing the election. And that's the rhetoric that will drive people to commit acts of violence. When it doesn't need to be. The election's not over. We haven't finished counting.
Yep, I totally agree with you. And we just need to be patient. I'm down to wait a little bit extra if it means we get awesome answers, you know? So, yeah, we're just going to have to see. I mean, obviously, this is not going to be decided yet, but I do think we can both have a pretty safe.
I just want to ask a question before we get out of here to you. Like, this is just for fun, kind of just, you know, call your shots, Derek Jeter style. Do you think that Trump will concede within a week?
No.
No,
not at all. What about you?
You're probably right, man. Probably not. If at all. He might not ever concede. He might still have to leave.
If at all.
But he might not ever concede. We'll see.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of people think that even if he loses, he's probably just going to try to buy like a media company like OAN, you know, that like really fringe, like makes Fox News look credible one.
One America.
I think that's what he's going to do. I think he's actually stronger outside of politics. And I think he could do more damage outside of politics.
Potentially,
but
he might do. He could also do damage to the Republican Party outside of politics, right? Like if the Republican Party is like, we probably need to dump this Trump thing and reassess, then, you know, he might cause some infighting. And it is really interesting to see what will happen to Trump outside of politics, whether it's in a few months or in 4 years in a few months. But to cap this episode up again, this is at 5:30 p.m. On Wednesday, November 4th. So, I mean, perhaps by the time you're listening to this, we may already know a winner or things have changed in the counts. But as it stands right now, Joe Biden is at 264 Electoral College votes. This is based off of Fox News. Some people have not called Arizona yet, but Fox and the Associated Press have. So basically, Joe Biden just needs to take Nevada to win. or he takes anything else and also wins. Whereas Trump needs to kind of win everything. That's left. He needs to win everything that's left. So right now, I would rather be in the Biden camp than the Trump camp if I'm looking at the numbers. And I think that's kind of the consensus we're seeing. And it's even at the point where Biden has kind of, without exactly saying it, declared victory.
Yep. Absolutely. I agree. And I like how he's done it. He said that from what I'm seeing, it looks like we're going to be victorious.
Right.
He's not doing Trump's kind of muddling the waters. So, yeah, we're just going to have to see. But things could change. But you're right. I think I definitely want to be Biden, not Trump right now. So, yeah.
Oh, I would not want to be Trump's sons either. There goes any connection you had to your father. Good luck. Yeah, have fun with the not talking to your dad again. Okay, cool. Is that anything else you want to say before we get out of here and get any other predictions, any other like crazy long shots you want to do you think maybe what do you think about like a 50-50 Senate with a Kamala Harris deciding vote?
I actually even personally wouldn't like that, to be completely honest. But I don't see that happening. That would be interesting. I don't really have any crazy predictions. I think kind of just waking up this morning and seeing how close it was enough of a kind of crazy outcome. Last night I was telling people my heart tells me Biden's going to win, but my gut tells me Trump's going to win. And unfortunately that was almost correct, but looks like we're going to get out of this one. And I think our country does need a unifier, and Biden's not perfect. I'm not a fan of Kamala Harris, but it's what we need right now.
Interesting take. I do think that the story of this election day or election cycle, as far as like the actual election itself and the voting, is going to be that red mirage. Again, we were going to bed last night and it looked like a 2016 map, and you wake up and the Midwest turned blue. So I think that red mirage is going to be kind of like the little footnote in the history book. If you have 4 seconds to know about what happened on election day, that's going to be it. And so we'll see, we'll see how much that's talked about in the future. So thank you all for listening to this episode of the Tonic Accord podcast. Again, if you might be listening to this and there might be new results and changes, so, cut us some slack, I guess. But we wanted to get something out to reflect what's just the crazy last 2 days that's been going on and kind of get our thoughts encapsulated in time. So thank you for listening. As always, you can find us on Podbean, YouTube, live streaming on Twitch occasionally. And this is a little bit of an unusual circumstance, but usually every week on Tuesdays we live stream on Twitch. And check us out. Leave a like. Thanks so much.